Amazing. So hello guys, I hope you're all well and having a great week. Tonight, Middlesex University Product Design Engineering and Design Engineering, we're really excited to host the 15th Talk in the annual guest lecture series. So this series runs weekly throughout the academic year on Thursday evenings, bringing together a vibrant mix of speakers from across the full spectrum of design and engineering. A mix of leading practitioners, opinion leaders, radical thinkers, and emerging talents to support and inspire your professional development. Tonight, we're excited to host Yasmin Ali, engineer, writer, and presenter. Yasmin is a chartered engineer and an energy innovation program manager at the Department for Business, Energy, and Industrial Strategy, where Yasmin supports technical solutions to reduce UK's greenhouse gas emissions. Before joining the government sector, Yasmin worked in conventional power generation. She worked in oil and gas exploration and production, and alongside district heating as well. Yasmin's really passionate about the future of energy and a really keen promoter of engineering careers. She's been featured on television and radio. She regularly visits schools and presents at events, and she writes for mainstream media about the achievement of engineers as well, alongside obviously the up-and-coming publication and book. In recognition of Yasmin's work, she's been shortlisted for a number of industry awards. And in 2020, she was named one of the Women's Engineering Society top 50 women engineers in sustainability. As usual, guys, feel free to gather your thoughts, your questions, your comments in the chat throughout the talk. We'll have Q&A at the end as well. And there's an option to go live and interact after the main talk. And without any further ado, over to Yasmin with a talk titled Power Up, an Engineer's Adventures in Energy. Yasmin.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. I'm going to try and put this into full screen. So let me know if that's worked at your end.
Brilliant.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Hi, everyone. Just to add to what Ahmed just said, please do think of lots of questions for me, or I'm very happy to hear any thoughts or reflections, or whatever you want to tell me. I'm going to chat for about half an hour or so, so we'll have lots of time at the end for that. So yeah, please do think of things to tell me, and I would love to. Having power cuts as a child, and I never thought anything of it. I just thought that was normal because I didn't know any different. And by the time I was 11, I moved to the UK with my family, and here in the UK the energy supply is most of the time completely reliable. So every time I switched on the lights, they came on. If I wanted hot water, it was there whenever I needed it. And I never thought about power cuts or the energy supply for quite a long time, until I joined the energy industry. So how did I get to the energy industry? So at school, I was studying sciences and maths, and I was interested in art and in languages, and I really found it difficult to choose a career. And I thought the whole idea of having to choose what job you're going to do for the rest of your life, when I was like 16, it was quite daunting. And I felt quite overwhelmed, and I decided I will be a doctor because that's what my parents do. So I understood what that job was. I applied for medicine. I didn't get in. I applied again the following year. I didn't get in again. And at that point, I thought, okay, maybe I'll try something different. At some point during that time, I'd got this leaflet in the post that said, "Why not Chem Eng?" on it. And it was advertising chemical engineering. And it talked about all these different industries that chemical engineers can work in. So you could work in food and drinks, or energy, or water purification, or pharmaceuticals. And I quite liked that it wasn't limiting you to one thing. And it seemed like by the end of a chemical engineering degree, you would have lots of different options. So I liked that lack of commitment. And the leaflet also said chemical engineers are some of the highest paid graduates, and that appealed to me at the time. So I went for it and got into the University of Nottingham, went off to study this thing that I knew very little about. And I spent 4 years at Nottingham. And the best part of that was definitely my second year, which I spent in Malaysia. So Nottingham has a campus out there, and you could just go and study the same things, but in a much warmer and nicer environment. And I got to travel around Southeast Asia, met people from all over the world, made friends that I am still in touch with today, almost, I think it's about 15 years later. So I think, and not only was it really fun, but when I came back and I was applying for internships or applying for jobs, I had this thing on my CV that was quite different, and it gave the recruiters something to talk to me about. And I guess it showed that I could work in different places with diverse teams. And I didn't really appreciate how important that was until much later. But I think the point is, if you get these opportunities to go and travel or to go and work abroad or do anything that's slightly different to just going to university and doing your degree, definitely take it. So I came back to the UK and I finished my degree and graduated, as you can see in the picture there, with my chemical engineering friends. And just before this, between my third and fourth year of university, I did a placement at a gas-fired power station in Lincolnshire. So it was this power station in the middle of a bunch of fields. And I remember driving up and driving in through those gates and not really knowing what it will be like or how I guess it will change my life, really. And in the 3 months that I worked there, I started to realize how important energy is. It is something that everybody relies on all of the time, and how many professionals there are in that industry just working away in the background, making sure it works so well that we don't even notice it. And just the infrastructure, there are power stations up and down the country. There are cables moving electricity all around. There are gas pipelines underneath our feet. All of that was just going on. And I thought, this is a good industry to be involved in. I want to do something that impacts people's lives. So I will go and work in energy. So I applied for a graduate scheme with E.ON, an energy company, and I managed to get a place. And my first placement on that graduate scheme, which the graduate scheme was 2 years, and I moved around every 6 months. So my first 6 months was at a coal-fired power station near Nottingham, which is what you can see in the photograph on the left-hand side there. And following that, I moved to London, and I worked in a really tiny gas-fired power station right in the centre of London. And I loved that because it was a small place and a really small team. So I got to know everyone quickly, and I was given a lot more responsibility. And it just, yeah, it was a good second placement to do. When that finished, I went abroad again. So I did an international placement in Turkey, working on some business development in the energy sector over there. Again, it was just an amazing opportunity to live in a beautiful city in Istanbul, meet people from there and get immersed in that culture and learn a tiny little bit of Turkish, which I've mostly forgotten now. But yeah, so after that 6 months, I came back to the UK. And at this point, I was choosing my final placement, and I thought, I've seen these power stations, I've seen how electricity is generated. I'd quite like to know where the fuel comes from. And E.ON had an oil and gas department, and they, did exploration and production of oil and gas, and that gas went on to be burnt in power stations to generate electricity. So I looked into that and arranged my next placement to be there. And during that time, I did my offshore survival training and got to fly out in helicopters to oil rigs and platforms in the North Sea. And these are extremely unique environments. And I feel fortunate to have been able to go and see them for myself. But not only that, I learn by doing and by being there. So being able to go out there and talk to the operators who live and work out there and see all of that equipment just helped me to be much better at my job. And when my graduate scheme finished, I was quite enjoying being in oil and gas. So I stayed and I stayed there for the next 5 years or so, and eventually moved back to the small power station in central London, which is what you can see on the right hand side there. It's right next to Smithfield Market, if you know where that is. If you're ever there, if you look up, you will see a white square chimney. That's the chimney of a power station. So I went back to that place, but this time to be the control room manager in district heating. So that was a little bit different, a bit more challenging. And also during that time, I got my engineering chartership through the Institution of Chemical Engineers. This was a really proud moment for me. It's, you know, it's the point in your career where your engineering peers validate that you are competent at doing your job. So that I was very happy to be given the chartership. So yeah, that's done. I've got that now. And yeah, so I was at this small power station working away, and I had been at E.ON for 7 years at this point. And I started to think that I'd seen all these little bits of the energy sector, but didn't really understand how it all fits together. And I was also getting more and more concerned about climate change and sustainability. And I wanted a job where I was definitely part of the solution. So I left my job and I had some time off and thought about what I wanted to do next, and spoke to lots and lots of people that I'd met during the last 7 years in the energy industry, explained to them what I wanted to do, to see if they had any suggestions of where I should work. They introduced me to more people. I applied for a whole bunch of jobs, did interviews. And one of the thoughts I had was maybe working in government would be good, because government sets all the rules for the energy sector. So that should give me that overview of how everything works and fits together. And again, through speaking to people who I'd met during my career, I, long story short, ended up at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which is where I am today. And I work as an innovation program manager. So we have a budget, we've got money to give to organizations who have ideas for climate change solutions, or ideas for things that will make the energy system more sustainable, and they want funding to develop those ideas. So I design and run innovation programs to achieve that, essentially. And I focus mainly on industry. So in the UK, there are lots of factories that produce steel and cement and glass and food and drinks and all that kind of thing, and they emit carbon dioxide in that process. So I run innovation programs to make industry more efficient, and also to look at fuel switching. So instead of using gas or coal or oil, can they use something more sustainable like low carbon electricity or hydrogen, or biomass, or whatever else they can come up with. So that's what I do. And it's my last day at BEIS tomorrow. So I'm moving on to a new job. You're probably some of the very few people out there who know that. So you're in on a secret. I've been here for 3.5 years and it's been amazing. But a new opportunity has come up, so I'll be moving on to work in the hydrogen sector. And if anyone wants to know more about that, I can tell you at the end. But yeah, that's the kind of technical side of what I do. But throughout the last 10 years or so, I've been doing lots of engineering public engagement. So I got into engineering not by accident, but I was a little bit misinformed. I didn't know what it was. So I want to make sure that people out there know about it and they can make a more informed career choice. So I speak at schools, I go to science festivals, and the picture on the top right hand side is from Smashfest, which is how I know a lot of the people at Middlesex University. One of my favorite things that I've done was at the Science Museum, where I made ice cream. I was doing a demo making ice cream using liquid nitrogen. So because there was ice cream involved, all the kids wanted to come and talk to me, and their parents as well. And as soon as I had them there, I could then tell them about the science and the engineering behind this process that I was doing in front of their eyes. So I hope that they'll associate having some fun with ice cream and engineering. But yeah, that's me getting rid of some of the liquid nitrogen that I had left over at the end of the day. And because I've done lots of this kind of stuff, it's created some opportunities to be on television documentaries. So I will occasionally pop up as an engineering expert on these documentaries. And through this kind of wider engineering community, I also got to meet the Queen, which was good fun. And that happened through the Queen Elizabeth Prize for Engineering. So I'm an ambassador for the prize. It is a £500,000 prize for an engineer or a group of engineers who have made a significant change to society. And back in 2015, the prize was given to a guy called Robert Langer, who is a chemical engineer, and he has spent his entire career working on drug delivery systems. So his research has positively impacted the health of, I don't know, it's probably millions of people. And so he was given the prize, and I was invited along to see him receiving his prize from the Queen. So that was good fun. And I guess I was doing all of this stuff, and I wanted to build up doing some writing as well. I wanted to build up the writing and presenting skills, and I looked for opportunities to do that and came across the British Science Association Media Fellowship, which was a program that I applied for and managed to get a place. And they take engineers and scientists and place them in media outlets to try and improve how science is reported. So I was put with the BBC Science Unit. It was only for about a month maybe in total over a summer, but I learnt so much. I was making bits for science radio. So for BBC World Service has a couple of science shows that I was making things for, and also writing pieces for the online news. And it was very, very surreal to see my name on the BBC website. It's just not something I ever thought would happen. But that taught me a lot. And it's like quite a fast-paced environment where you write a story one day and it's up the next day, and then that's it, you move on to the next thing. And that was really a big contrast to the job that I was doing in oil and gas, where I was working on this huge project and very little changed from day to day. It took a really long time to get things going. So that taught me a lot about the media world, and I continued to write after I finished. So I managed to get another piece published on the BBC about cryogenic energy storage. And then I got in touch with the Metro and did a couple of blogs for them. And I really like this one that I did, which was about women who work in the rail industry. So it was 5 women that I had a chat with and wrote a little paragraph about each one of them. And kind of following on from that theme, I talked to the Chemical Engineer magazine, which is the magazine published by the Chemical Engineering Institution. And I said I had this idea of interviewing other chemical engineers who have kind of interesting or different careers and writing about them for the magazine. And they were like, yeah, sure, go for it. So I've interviewed and written about 25 people now, I think. And some of them are engineers and writers. And that kind of takes me to what I'm doing at the moment. So I really, really enjoy writing, and I thought the next logical step is to write a book. But obviously I had no idea how you go about doing that. So I wanted to write something that's non-fiction, but something that's like sciencey but entertaining. And through people that I met and writing groups that I joined, I've managed to get there, and I'll tell you a bit about that in a moment. But these are some of the people that I came across when I was writing these articles for The Chemical Engineer. So David did a PhD in chemical engineering and then went into science journalism. And he's written a few books. This one I highly recommend, The Man Who Couldn't Stop. So it's about obsessive compulsive disorder. He himself is a sufferer. So he's written about his own experiences plus the history and the science behind it. And it's just a very, very beautiful book. And this is Fiona. So Fiona has had a long and successful career in the chemicals industry. She's been working in the chemical sector as an engineer for about 30 or 40 years. And in the last 10 years, she decided to start writing crime fiction. And she's now published 3 or 4 books that are they're just amazing. So they all center around this character called Jack Silver, who uses her chemical engineering skills to solve these extremely elaborate international crimes. It's a bit like James Bond, I guess, but it's a chemical engineer. So both Fiona and David have inspired me to pursue writing, because I've seen that it's possible. They've done it, so I could probably do it too. And then this is Jaga, who is a really fun person that I met as well. So she's the head brewer at a microbrewery in North London, in Walthamstow, called Wildcard. She does a lot of TV stuff as well. She has done lots of food programs, and she's also written this book about the craft of home brewing. So again, another person who's combined chemical engineering and writing. And 2 more people who are not chemical engineers. This is Roma. So you might have come across her before. She's a structural engineer. Her first book was called Built, and she's writing another engineering book now. But she was someone that was very helpful to me in explaining how the world of publishing works and introducing me to a few people who have helped me along the way. And then this person, Mark, is a materials engineer at UCL. And I think I was trying to think about books that I've read, and I think maybe this one was one of the first ones that I read that was a science book that was fun. And I was like, this is great. I want to write something like this. So he's another person who's inspired me to carry on, and also just a very nice person who has also been quite helpful with introducing me to people in the writing world. So through all of that, so building up that writing experience, coming up, reading other people's books and meeting people, and putting that all together, I came up with an idea for a book about energy, and I now have a publisher that's on board. So this book should be coming out in 2024. It's called Power Up: An Engineer's Adventures in Energy, or that's the working title at the moment anyway. And I'd read a lot of energy books that tell you about one specific bit, but I thought maybe something that tells a non-technical reader about the whole industry through stories could be quite a good way to engage people in the subject. So it will start with where our energy resources come from. So the sun, fossil fuels. So that on the left-hand side there is Battersea Power Station, which is a coal-fired power station, or was a coal-fired power station in London. And then once we see where these energy resources come from, the next section is about how we move them around. So these things aren't equally distributed around the world. You know, you can get natural gas out from Norway, and then that will travel through a pipeline to the UK for us to use, or you might generate electricity from the sun in Spain, and then that might travel through cables across the border to somewhere else. So that's what the next section covers. And then the final section will be about how we use energy. So how we heat our homes around or cool our homes around the world, how our industry works. So the things that we manufacture, like fertilizer, which helps us to grow food, and also transport, so how we move ourselves and our goods around. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. That's keeping me busy. I'm about maybe halfway through drafting this book, but I've been chatting to people all across the world who are in the energy industry, and I'm really excited to share all of the stories with you in the near future. I think that's me. So yeah, I'd love to hear any thoughts or questions or anything that you want to tell me.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Yasmin. That was a superb overview of yourself, your journey, your education, and leading towards your writing and publication. That's on its way as well. Fantastic. And participants, all of you guys, feel free to continue to gather your thoughts and your questions in the chat. There's a few coming in already. And if you want to interact and go live, feel free to post a request in the chat as well, and we can definitely make that happen. So Yasmin, the first question coming through from Kai Stopford was, realistically, do you think the government is the best place to work in terms of making a difference?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's a good place to work to make a difference. Yeah, so like I've been able to shape these innovation programs and also use my engineering skills to then advise policy. So I think working in policy could be a good place to make a difference. Yeah, so I've got colleagues who are working on, how do we decarbonize industry? So the government put out an industrial decarbonization strategy. I think it was last year. So the people that work in policy would have had quite a lot of influence on putting that together. So I think it is a good place to make a difference. I don't know if you can make all of the difference, and I think that's more about people working together in industry and government and academia and with the public as well to get that full change happening.
Amazing. And in terms of building on that question, another question coming through in terms of what's your day-to-day kind of routine and work experience like working in the government sector?
What's my day-to-day like? It's quite varied. So some days I'm on site visits, so we might be funding projects in other parts of the country, and I'll go and visit them and see them. Some days I will be writing business cases. So if I want to design and launch a new innovation competition, I will put together a justification for why we need it and what it's going to look like. And then a lot is working with colleagues. So I've got a small team, and we all work together to get this stuff done. Once we're in that competition phase, then I might be assessing bids that come in for funding, and that's been quite a big part of the job over the last couple of years, and then setting up those projects. So anyone who wins funding, setting up the project management, things from the government end for that. And another bit of the job is that policy side of things. So there will be policy people that need technical advice because they don't have a technical background. So they'll come to me with all sorts of weird and wonderful questions that I will try to answer for them.
Amazing. And Iram's asking a question.
I think you're on mute, or I
Um,
can't hear you. Oh, there you go. I can
and
hear you.
Iram's asking a question with regards to your outreach at the Science Museum. So how quick was the ice cream made with the liquid nitrogen? And what was the process of making it?
How quick does it remain frozen?
Yeah, and in terms of making the ice cream, like how long did it make that?
It's very quick. So you've got this liquid nitrogen. As soon as you pour it out of the flask that's keeping it liquid, it immediately turns back into a gas, and then in that process, it's taking the heat away from that mixture of milk and cream and sugar or whatever else was in there. So it happens very quickly, probably like 20-30 seconds, I would say. You've got your ice cream, and then it stays frozen for the same amount of time as normal ice cream, really.
Amazing. And Fatawu Yakubu was asking, in terms of working in the government sector, did you find that it enhanced your professional advancement and your career prospects?
I would say definitely, yeah, because I've been like really exposed to a lot of different companies and the whole industry, and I've got to meet people who are at quite a senior level within organizations and trade bodies, and yeah, it's definitely a good career eye-opener and a good place to make contacts as well.
Amazing. And right, he's asking, do you have a personal favorite in terms of projects that you've worked on so far?
I need to come up with one because people ask me that question a lot. There are projects that I haven't personally worked on, but
Did it cut out a bit, Mehmet?
Yeah, it's cut out for me totally.
Yeah. I think Yasmin, she may have lost the connection.
Yeah, it's lost connection.
She's dropped out. But she's back. We can't hear you yet.
We can't hear you yet, Yasmin.
can't hear you, Ahmed.
Perfect. There you go. Yeah, no, I think your internet dropped out there.
Okay, that's inconvenient. Did you catch any of that, or
the start of it in terms of your favorite personal project? And yeah, maybe you want to go back and
yeah, sure. So I was just saying there's a project that we funded, that government funded, that I'm not going to take the credit for it because I didn't work on it, but I still think it's very cool. It's called Dolphin. It was run by a company called ERM, and it's a floating offshore wind turbine with electrolysis on the base of the wind turbine. So you'd put this thing out at sea. It would produce electricity to power an electrolyzer and split desalinated water that you get from the sea into hydrogen and oxygen, and then that hydrogen gets piped back to shore to be used as a fuel. And yeah, it's just quite, I think it's quite a cool concept, and they will hopefully build a prototype at some point and show that it works.
Amazing. And Nihal Pipalia is asking a question with regards to the innovation program. So could you tell us a little bit more about the innovation program, and like, is it more specific to industries or is it more like a competition based?
Yeah, sure. So if you're interested, you can look it up. The latest one that I'm working on is called the Net Zero Innovation Portfolio. And it's overall, it's £1 billion. And that's split into different areas of the energy industry. So there's some funding that goes to the nuclear sector. There's some that goes to industry, which is the bit that I work on. Some for things like home type things, so heating or installation for homes and that kind of stuff. And then there is one particular competition that is a bit of a miscellaneous one called the Energy Entrepreneurs Fund, and that's for any energy startup or company that has an idea that they want to develop. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of competitions that fall under this net zero innovation portfolio.
Amazing. And is there anything specific for students that you would recommend that's out there, like in terms of, upping the skills, outreach, engagement, any of these kind of innovation programs or competitions?
I'd say the ones that I work on are more aimed at industry. So I don't know if people are familiar with technology readiness levels, but it's about how basically like how developed your idea is. So university research tends to be at the lower end of that scale, and that's not the kind of stuff that the program I work on would fund. We are looking for things that are a little bit more ready, but they're not quite commercially ready. So we want to give them money to help them become commercially viable. So I don't know, I can't think of any specific competitions for students off the top of my head. Yeah, but maybe one to keep in mind for when they're in industry.
Amazing. And what's your thoughts in terms of going from, working in the government to the hydrogen sector, and like, what's the nature of work that you might be undertaking over the next months and weeks and years, I guess?
Yeah, so I will be working on hydrogen project development, which is this kind of new and exciting bit of the energy sector that doesn't really exist yet. And the whole idea is that we could use hydrogen as a fuel, just like natural gas. Obviously, when you burn natural gas, you generate carbon dioxide. If you burn hydrogen, you just get water at the other end. I'm really oversimplifying it, but the idea is that we're not going to generate more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, but things aren't always quite as simple as they seem. So that hydrogen has to come from somewhere. It is usually attached to other molecules. So it's bound up in water or bound up in hydrocarbon like natural gas. So I will be working on how we produce on hydrogen production. So like using electrolysis to split that water into hydrogen and then piping that to wherever it needs to be used. I don't know if I explained that very well. Please do ask any follow-up questions.
No, of course, that was awesome. And then in terms of obviously, the energy sector at the moment, with the transition into electric vehicles, EVs, and so forth. What's your thoughts in terms of hydrogen fuel for personal and public transport?
I think I don't know. I think it makes sense because hydrogen requires quite a lot of resource for us to make it in the first place. It makes sense to use electricity where you can, but there will be some, and there may be some applications where electricity just doesn't quite work yet. So I think the example that's used commonly is long distance and long haul, not long haul, like heavy goods vehicles. So if you've got those big lorries and you're moving a lot of stuff around over long distances, the batteries, the size of battery that you would need to be able to do that is just too heavy at the moment. So in those kinds of cases, using hydrogen might make more sense, but also in industrial applications where maybe you've got an oven or a kiln of some sort, and it's maybe difficult to electrify that for some technical reasons. And in that case, it makes sense to use hydrogen. But I think we need to be quite careful and sensible about where we use it, and just bearing in mind that it does require a lot of resource to make it in the first place. So it's not one of those solutions that is going to fix everything for us.
Definitely. And then another question, I guess. What would some of your advices be for students who are graduating and moving into the sector in terms of, from the perspective that you have, obviously, having undertaken, a master's or whatever, and then transitioning into the industry and navigating your way into where you are now? What are some of the key learnings that you could offer the students in terms of advices and tips going forward?
I think, try to do things that you're interested in, but also I think it's good to stay open-minded. So I think there are lots and lots of jobs out there that you won't know exist, and like even for me, there are still lots of jobs out there that I don't know about, and you know, your perfect job might be something that you don't know about, and unless you try different things, you're not going to discover that. So it's good to be open-minded and try things out. And I think one fear that I had was that I would take a job and be stuck in it forever, but it's just not like that. That in reality, you do something for a little while, and if it doesn't work, you move on to something else. And even if you do something that you do enjoy, then you probably will move on at some point, just from a career progression point of view. So try to follow what you're interested in, but in an open-minded way. And I had another one that I've now forgotten. So what was I going to say? No, I don't know. I'll tell you if I remember.
Amazing. And I guess in terms of questions, I think that's questions have come to an end. Is there anyone else in the crowd who, or in the participants, who would like to, ask another question or go live? Go for it, Mehmet.
Yasmin, what do you think the main source of, let's say, domestic energy will be in the next 10 to 15 years? Because we're pushing
in the UK?
Electrification, electrics, but what do you think is what's going to be a sort of a step change in terms of, I think gas is problematic, natural gas. We're going to run out at some point soon. So is electric going to be the main one, or will be something else that will come along like hydrogen as you're exploring?
Do you mean in the UK or in the world? Because I think it'll be different.
Let's say you look at UK, which we probably
okay,
not
good.
better.
That's an easier question. Yeah,
What's
I
the
mean, I
direction of
think
travel?
electricity will play a big part. So there are some government initiatives out there to massively increase the amount of offshore wind generation that we have. So I think that will play a big part. There's also a push for nuclear. So we may see some small modular reactors popping up in the UK as well. I think the big question that I don't know the answer to is heat. So most of us have gas boilers in our homes, and how you decarbonize that is a very tough problem. So there is a policy team in government working on that, but they're not going to come to a decision until the mid 2020s. But that could be a big game changer. If they say we can give everybody electric heating, then that really pushes that electrification picture. But if they say we will, we think that we should pipe hydrogen into everybody's homes, then that again completely changes the picture for the hydrogen industry. But yeah, I don't know. I think that heat question, I think, is really important.
Because there's a lot of talk about heat pumps replacing gas boilers. But I'm not sure how practical that is.
I think we have to try everything and see what works.
Okay. Thank you.
Just as an addendum to that conversation, I'm sure my age now, I was listening to some discussion on Radio 4 a little while ago about transitioning and adapting the current heating system, domestic gas heating systems, to hydrogen delivery. And the discussion was fascinating because technically the perspective was within boundaries, it's relatively straightforward. But what was pointed out by one of the participants in the discussion is something I hadn't considered. In order to do it, the number of trained engineers we have to be able to do that for the millions of houses that would be needed are just, impossibly low. and we'd have to be training additional hundreds of thousands of engineers each year in order to satisfy it within a 10-year change around. And it was just a really fascinating thing about engineering and about routes into engineering and what engineers do, who they, you know, what they do, what they could be doing, and how we encourage more people in, because it's all very well to set a policy that says we could transition, but if the people aren't there to do it and to implement it, we're kind of stuck anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's another big issue, but that's the same with heat pumps. So I think there's already a shortage of competent engineers who know how to install those and how to maintain them. So I think whatever we do, we need that skills bit as well to go along with it. And that is something that does come up in all of the government strategies with these things. But you know, it's one thing writing a strategy, but making it a reality is something else. I think another thing, like we sometimes, well, me and other engineers sometimes just focus on the technical solution and forget about that kind of stuff. And one thing that I think is important that I'm not sure we're doing enough around is around public engagement. So if we are going to introduce hydrogen to people's homes, what do they actually think about that? And are people going to be okay with that? So yeah, that I think we need to be doing a lot more, because I think when you say hydrogen to people, they probably think of hydrogen bombs or the Hindenburg airship thing, and they're both quite scary things. So do you want that in your house? If we need to be getting out there and explaining what this is and what we're doing to make it safe so that people are comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Amazing. And a question coming in from Ron Robinson. In your opinion, which is the greenest and most efficient source of energy, taking into account the cost to establish that energy source and the longevity of that source as well?
I mean, wind and solar are becoming quite cheap, so the costs are dropping. The more of that we install, the lower the costs get, and you know, that is a green fuel source. You can't really argue with that. So that is probably one of the best, I would say. I've been reading a lot about fusion recently, so that's on my mind. But that's obviously not a reality just yet, but perhaps if and when we get to that could be a complete huge game changer. So yeah, I guess for now, maybe relying on the sun and the wind, and then in future, potentially fusion.
Amazing. And I guess in terms of the questions, if we're done there, right, Yasmin, it was a fantastic talking question and answer session as well. So thanks for your time in the talk. Details of the talk and Yasmin was sent to your emails ahead of the talk, guys, including links to the LinkedIn, Yasmin's website and social media links as well. So definitely feel free to browse and connect. And to conclude as well, keep an eye out for the publication in the next couple of years, Power Up in Engineers, Adventure and Energy. And thank you again, Yasmin.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun. Hopefully I get to see you all in real life at some point soon.
Definitely.
Definitely. Thanks, Yasmin.
Thanks, Yasmin.
Thanks.
And to all the participants and attendees who've joined tonight as well, all staff, students, alumni, we really look forward to seeing you again next week. So keep an eye out for emails for the details of the next speaker and links to the next talk. Until next week, until next Thursday, stay well, stay safe, and thank you, guys.